We're ready. I call to order the Mount Lebanon School District Policy Meeting of June 17th, 2024. It's 6:18 p.m. We have Mr. Weiland, we have Dr. Freeze, we have myself, Claire Guth, we have Mr. Peterson, Ms. Gensel, and then Mr. Hoffman. Today we're going to discuss three, not necessarily policies, but three policy-related items. And one is the transition to the PSBA policy service. Also, a policy crosswalk and comparables. We'll look at current existing Mount Lebanon policies and how they will facilitate into PSBA policies, and then planning for the 2024-2025 school year. So Dr. Freeze, oh, then I'm sorry, Mr. Davis. We have Mr. Davis here as well. Sorry. So Dr. Freeze, do you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have talked about converting our current policies over to PSBA, which is the Pennsylvania School Board Association's format. They have a policy maintenance program that helps you to basically fulfill the ongoing need to update policies and to ensure that we are up to date and have an appropriate compliant policy manual. Our current system is the National School Board Association's system for articulating policies. The majority of school districts in the state of Pennsylvania do use PSBA. So some of the things that we have been considering as we talk about this and that we'll speak about tonight is what does that look like from a conversion standpoint. So one of the things that we did was we took the current policies and we equated those to the PSBA policies that they would align with. Some there is some overlap, some there are PSBA policies that there aren't current policies that we have in place here at Mount Lebanon. Some of them you see a policy for PSBA show up in a couple of our different policies, and then the same way the opposite, where you'll see a current policy show up in a few of the PSBA policies. So about a month ago, I shared the crosswalk between the PSBA policy numbers and names and then the current policy letters and policy names. And what you'll see is from a PSBA standpoint, it's broken down into different categories that use numerical rather than letters. The first is the 000s, which is local board procedures. The next is the 100s, which is program related. And then we have 200, which is pupil related, 300, which is employees, 600, which is finances, 700, which is property, 800, operations, and then 900, which is community. So from a standpoint of being able to communicate policies to the community, the numerical system does make it simpler for you to search and for you to look at more categorized policies. So I'll stop there before we move on to talking a little bit further about the crosswalk and see if there's any questions or any discussion about just the overarching plan to move from our current system to PSBA.
Yeah, this is really exceptional. This is a lot of work, so thank you very much. I said Mr. Peterson, you're involved too. Yeah, and it's also like notes a lot of policies that we don't have policies for. So, I mean, a lot of them obviously fall under various other current policies in the alphabetical letter format. But Mr. Hoffman, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so, the PSBA policies, obviously, vetted across the state in terms of, making sure they're up to date and whatnot. Is the vision to take those kind of as templates and then add to them, customize them based on our kind of the input
Yes.
that we receive as well as kind of our unique circumstances?
Yes. Yes, we would use them as a template and kind of like what we were doing with our current policy where we would review it, see if there's anything else that we wanted to add and then put it before the board. We would do that in the same way. One of the thoughts was when you look at the 000s of the local board procedures, we could adopt those all at the same time. So that we will take a look at them, we'll evaluate them, we'll make recommendations, and then say in the month of September, we would present those and approve them based upon feedback. And then in the month of October, we would move on to the 100s, which is programs. One of the other things that we talked about as an administrative team was there are policies that we need to address at the beginning of the year that we'll have to also do. So Title IX, the regulations have updated, and we will need to approve those in the month of August. Right now, the updates haven't been made to Title IX because it's so new, and by August, though, we'll have the opportunity to do that.
It goes into effect officially in August, right? Those
Yeah.
changes?
Yeah, there's, August 4th is the deadline. Because of when they announced them, I'm not aware of any school district that is actually going to have them in place by August 4th, but of course, the students aren't here. And so
Yeah.
the plan would be to have them adopted at the regular meeting in August before the school year starts.
And I know states across the country have challenged this, but Pennsylvania,
Well, I don't think any of the,
no judges.
some of the suits, they request nationwide injunctions. Judges are very reluctant to grant those. So, I think our advice is to proceed as though they're going to be stricken, or valid rather, and if in fact they're stricken, our old policy we know complies. But I don't know that we're going to see a court order by that date.
And then the other one would be the yearly update to the bullying and harassment. So those would be two that in August that we would do, and then in the month of September do like the 000s, and then the 100s, then the 200s, etc. One of the other things that I thought would probably make a lot of sense for us is to have Mr. Peterson give us an overview of what each of our roles are as they relate to policies. I know that's something that I was asked, and I think you did like a general overview when we onboarded new board members, but that you would give like an overview of that as well.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
It doesn't have to be tonight, just in general before we start this whole process.
sure.
This isn't over.
I just note, as we adopt sections, we'll be jumping around a little bit. For instance, you get all the way down to 900 before you get to public participation in board meetings. They're in our first section. So we'll have to carefully go through to point out, so we don't have two inconsistent policies.
So two thoughts. One, Mr. Peterson's, just there, because they're organized differently, for us to take one lump, say the zeros or the 100s or whatever it is, there's an opportunity that we don't line up one-to-one. So we'll have to sort of look globally at our policies and look for those inconsistencies or incongruence and adjust accordingly. And two, I mean, certainly want to look carefully at things that are unique to us and things that we'd like to maintain. But at the same time, I think if we get too far from the template model, the value of having a template model will be diminished some, because if everything is massively customized, then as the PSBA updates it annually, the value to us of that is reduced some. And I'm comfortable with moving more towards this PSBA model and customizing less and being just selective in how we choose to change the PSBA stuff to fit what we need to continue to run the district.
What's the relationship so PSBA has a liaison that has been helping also throughout this process?
Yes, and they have a lot of training as well that we would set up for the board to be able to kind of learn more about their policy program, as well as to help us to work our way through it. And that comes, there's not an additional cost for that.
Yeah, and they have you can regularly contact them throughout the year, and there's no additional cost, which is really nice.
Doc, in your experience, and maybe Tom also, with other districts, I mean, how do other districts customize, that utilize the PSBA templates, do they customize them a great deal, or do they pretty straight out of the box? Or is it all over the map?
I've had both experiences. I've had custom and not custom.
Yeah,
A lot of custom.
we have several clients who, when there is an update, it's distributed, but they don't have a policy committee. They
Just adopt it.
They basically say, unless anybody has a concern or a question. And some districts have kind of adopted the whole thing at once. You can see, again, just happening to look at section 900 here, those issues would be 10 of our policy committee meetings, I mean, to get through them all.
Yeah.
And so we won't be doing them all in one night. But I would say very small minority do any sort of extensive revisions. The thing that's nice about this, of course, is it is updated regularly. PSBA legal staff is always, looking at them. They don't always have them updated real currently. Sometimes they get a little bit behind. But I would say most of our districts rather, probably have at least 90% of
Just
the sort of template.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's value in doing it that way.
And, the thing that I think a lot of them take a little comfort in is, by definition, any policy can be revised or amended by the board.
Mhm.
So if something does sort of come out of left field, a unique element of some school district where it just doesn't fit, they don't feel like they have to throw the whole thing out. They just take action to amend the individual policy.
Sure.
From like a risk perspective, it seems like a really good path to take. Mrs. Gensel, any questions or comments?
It's not an important question. Why do we skip over the 400s and the 500s? It jumps from 350. Like I said, it's probably a jump question, but we jump like the 300s.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they don't have 400, 500s for whatever reason. I don't know if do you think it's related to PA code?
I did notice that the finance section is section 6, which is Title 6 of the school code.
Yeah,
But the rest of them
don't match up.
overlap. Personnel is in Title 11. And
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know. I know
Just
that,
curious.
yeah. We definitely didn't leave them out, but PSBA, that'll be on our
I
list of
didn't think
questions
that,
for
but
them.
it's mysterious 400s and 500s yet to be.
the 13th floor hotel.
Right. I wasn't sure.
Data practices that no one uses anymore.
One of the other things that I wanted to bring up for next year, and this is something for us to consider, is that we currently use this recorder to record our meetings. I would like to recommend that we move to using the same system we use for everything else, so that it's consistent. So we'd have a policy meeting that would be, you could Zoom into and watch it. I don't know that we need the back and forth, but at least we can record it so that they can watch it, because this feels like very 1902.
I didn't know that's what.
Then you have.
Maybe not 1902, but maybe 1950.
Would that also have written? Because we don't vote on anything, so it's not like you would have to record votes, but commentary, or just commentary would be on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, it would be just, a Zoom that we can record and then put up with the rest of the meetings. Since we do it already,
Yeah.
it just makes sense, because this gets downloaded and then uploaded. It would just have our faces with our voices.
That sounds great. I think the public would be excited to Zoom into another school board event.
So you mentioned the anti-bullying policy, I think, is one piece. So as there are things like that come up that may kind of supersede, if we're not getting to 400s till spring or whatever it may be, as there are things that may need to be addressed earlier, how do we kind of handle that?
Yeah, we'll put those on there up front. So if something were to change that they say you need to implement this by this date, or you have to have an update for the year, we would put those along with whatever the section was that we were working on for that month.
Okay.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so I don't think, it's flexible, and I think that we should keep that in mind. To Tom's point, there's some in the 900s that will need to be looked at with the 000s, for instance. I feel like the flexibility, it's basically whatever we choose to do, so that's like a good thing too.
And in the situation where, so Pittsburgh Public School has an additional policy on gender equity and pronouns, so we can add additional policies beyond the recommendations here. Is that correct?
Yes.
Perfect.
And the other than the ones you mentioned that sort of legally we have to take action on, other than that, the practice has been to sort of go by age. Something hasn't been looked at. PSBA doesn't necessarily do that. It's more sort of needs-based. That doesn't mean that the policy committee still couldn't look at dates if it wanted to, although this is going to be a big undertaking. So, for the foreseeable future, I think that'll be the main topic of discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, they'll amend policies. It very rarely just based on sort of updating language. There's been years where we realized we still had photostat as a word in a policy, or those kinds of things. Theirs are more based on either court cases or new legislation.
What's photostat?
It's like a mimeograph.
So like
Microfiche.
Yeah, microfiche.
Well, this is a huge undertaking, and it's much appreciated, so thank you both very much. Dr. Davis?
And do we typically meet every month? Is that kind of as a policy committee, once a month? Or
Not next month.
Or it depends on what's happening?
It's maybe 10 months a year. So the board president typically appoints policies after the reorg meeting. So usually December there won't be a policy committee. Maybe even it might not be established by January. We don't meet in July. And there have been years where there were just other things, or not years, months, where there were so many other things going on that it was just determined that there was nothing urgent enough to have to call the meeting. But generally, yeah, it's monthly, and eventually, recommendations are made to the board to put policies on an agenda for the following week.
Another nice aspect of board docs is that when we implement these policies, we can do everything in board docs to show like the policy and then the kind of red line, which is really nice too, because it helps you to keep track, and then once you accept them, it'll update it to the policy. So we do have that, that opportunity as well. So the public can see them as well as we're updating them.
That's great.
We're introducing all kinds of new things. It's going to be
Move over PDFs.
intense, but it'll be good.
Any other questions or comments?
So will the board need to vote on the undertaking as a whole?
No, certainly could, or at least mention either in a president's report or superintendent's report that
Right, that we're headed in this direction?
yeah, the actual vote won't be needed until you
Until we
replace.
actually start swapping out policies?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Sounds good to me.
Great. And then, so that kind of covers the policy crosswalk and comparables. Planning for the 2024-2025 school year.
So our goal would be, when we come back in August, we will do the Title IX and the bullying and harassment, and then introduce the topic of PSBA being our new practice. And then in the month of September, we would do the 000s and the accompanying policies that are affected by those in the 900s and the other areas. And then go from there. And go, starting with the 000s, going to the 100s, and just moving our way through. It's going to take time, for sure, but I think that what's nice is we have summertime, right? So we can do, on our side, from an administrative standpoint, we can begin prepping those so that you're getting them in advance, and that it's not like you're getting them the day before. Like, our goal is to go through these and to prep them so that we have, time to look at them as well.
Yeah, the going way back to when the NSBA system was adopted, I think the board at that time, it's shorter. You can tell how many more policies the PSBA has. Part of that is just the passage of time, but there are going to be policies that you get to that at this point have been handled more administratively. There was never, like, say, a board vote on. I'm just looking at some things about class rank, things that have not been a matter of board action here before. So that'll be a part of the discussion is for all of these topics, do you want them to be something that any change would require a board vote, or are they something that the administration would notify the board but wouldn't necessarily require a vote? And but to Mr. Weiland's point, if you go too far in terms of picking and choosing that, then sort of blanket updates are never going to be very, very effective. But it'll just be something that the administration will have to note, that there may be something that we used to look at administratively that now needs to be the topic of a policy committee meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's really tremendous. Like, also very good ideas. We don't have a policy for comprehensive planning. We just have a strategic plan. So much more work to do. Waiting. Great. Well, that sounds like a great plan. Thank you. This is a lot of work. We really appreciate all the time you spent doing this.
Yeah, we're happy to do it.
Any other comments or questions? Great. Any questions or comments from residents in the community?
I was wondering, since there are so many more policies under PSBA than there are in our current letter system, will they be much more specific and much shorter in comparison to, for example, are ours quite all-inclusive and the PSBA is line item? Or, because it would surprise one to look and see that we don't have a policy for everything that matches on the left. And my understanding would be, well, maybe some of our policies are more globally, cover more areas than the specificity on the left. Is that accurate, or a different way?
I think it's just a different way of looking at it. So, for instance, there may be some categories where one of our current policies is included in 2 PSBA policies, right? Or we didn't have a level of specificity. So, for instance, for like comprehensive planning, it just isn't in there, but now it will be. I wouldn't say that the policies are longer per se with PSBA or shorter. I would just say that they are they're organized in a different way, I guess would be the best way to put it. And in some cases, they go into further detail about different aspects, which, is a good thing and probably a bad thing. It adds more work to it, but it also provides more specificity for us as a district as it relates to policy.
And as we go through and you know, if there's something that is mentioned in one of our handbooks that we feel should actually be policy, that can be discussed.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot that are currently like administrative directives that would be a policy.
Like allergy, you know, a lot of people say, why do we not have a policy on allergy management? Or, I don't know, this just happens to be what I glanced at, but.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at, for instance, under the 100s, you know, there's more specificity around academic standards, guides for planned instruction, adoption of planned instruction, lesson plans, confidentiality of special education student information. It provides more specificity under those categories, which can also give better guidance, right, to our administrators as they implement policy.
Yeah, would you generally err, like, well, we can talk about it next year. I was going to say, like, is there a desire for the administration to be more specific, to change, you know, take some of these things that are in handbook or not at all and make that, or not? Or is that too much of a big, maybe that's a big
I think
question.
it's more or less like on a case-by-case
Right.
basis. I think some of them, yes, some of it may be in the handbook, maybe, but it may need to be more generalized. You know, for instance, independent study, for instance. You know, that may be something that we put more of a policy around than what the
Currently, it's a
handbook says.
procedure.
Yeah, it's a procedure now. So then that could help us with students who are interested in independent study, that it's articulated in a board-driven policy as well. Or, you know, graduating early, or name whatever the topic is. It gives you more opportunity to publicly state what the policy is, and then subsequently the procedure.
Yeah, for instance, if you look in the 300s about employees, a significant number of those issues are covered by collective bargaining agreements and are not subject to board policy. So the policy might say nothing more than see the CBA, see Act 93. But for a lot of those sorts of things that are well known to be in other documents here, we never really discussed putting anything about it in the policy manual.
But things like political activities and gifts and things like that, that may be something that we want to consider so that it's very clear to people what our expectations are as to how they operate. Or even like social media and, you know, and how that's utilized. I think that that's another area that has come up for us. That would be something that we would consider.
And some of the PSBA policies are very general, like class size is 126. I think the policy says just like a recommendation is comfortable level of students per teacher. It's not like some countries that have like a cap at 30 students that
Right.
requires a new teacher in a new class.
Right.
It's very organized.
Thank you for adding more to your plate. It's really impressive.
It'll be good. I think it's a really good exercise for us just because as a, you know, we're growing together and it gives us opportunity to have discussions about where we would like to see the district go. And this will happen or coincide with comprehensive and strategic planning. So it makes sense to embark upon this now, especially when we have the energy behind it. I think it'll just set us up for success.
Great. Any other questions from residents or community members in the audience? Great. Well then, if we don't have any questions, we will adjourn and meet back in August. Is that how you end a meeting? Thank you all so much. Adjourn.